Hello everyone, George here, Catholic Positive Energy. I'm getting over a little cold, so you might notice it in my voice, but I'm certainly trailing on. Forgive me if I cough a little bit, but it's a good thing that you're all watching me virtually and you're not right next to me right now. Anyways, I wanted to do a broadcast last week, but I had something busy happening like every single day. And when I was thinking, I actually didn't know what to talk about on the next broadcast, but I thought, okay, wait a minute. Let's look at what's going on in the church as far as the liturgical calendar. Okay, today is Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent. I got my ashes already, you can see it. I obviously wanted to do the broadcast while I have this because this is a very important day in the liturgical calendar of the Catholic Church. Now, if there's anybody out there, and I'm sure there may be some people watching me right now who may not know what Lent is or what Ash Wednesday may be, you're in luck. I'm going to explain it all right here. But I know there's a lot of people who may already know this already. But like I say, I want to be considerate to new viewers or to people who may have never heard any of this before. Now, Ash Wednesday marks the beginning of Lent, which involves 40 days of prayer, fasting, abstinence, or I've heard prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. This is preparation for before Easter. And like in, okay, here, I can do this because I just graduated from grad school and I studied Catholic theology for the past 3 years. I'm not a scholar, but I can explain this. Now, in the Old Testament, when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, out of bondage, and they wandered the desert for 40 years, this is also something symbolic regarding Lent. I'll explain all that. Just, yeah, right as I go along. Now, if you look in the Old Testament, starting in the book of Exodus, that's where this starts, Moses and the Israelites. It starts in Exodus, continues on in Leviticus, as well as in Numbers, and finds its culmination in the book of Deuteronomy. So, in the Pentateuch, that involves the first 5 books of the Bible, the second through the 5th, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, all tell this story of Moses and the Israelites wandering through the desert. And this 40 is symbolic. Now, in the New Testament, when Jesus comes, and we talk, and this is all throughout the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and this is talked about in different ways from different angles. Jesus, before his passion and death, he goes out into the wilderness. Some people say wilderness or desert. Those are basically the same thing, just different words. Jesus went into the desert for 40 days, and he was praying and fasting. He had nothing but, I think, bread and water. He went by himself. Now, Moses and the Israelites wandering the desert for 40 years, Jesus wandering the desert for 40 days. Those things are symbolic. They're connected. They're fulfilled. It's not a coincidence. So that's why we have Lent, because this 40 days, in a sense, we're in the desert. I know there are some Catholic churches that may not have the holy water at some of the doors. Some do that because we're in the desert. Some don't. This is a time when we, in a sense, we as Catholics are in the desert, and we are preparing and going through what Moses and the Israelites went through, what Jesus went through. This is why we have Lent. Trust me, it took me more than just grad school, a lot of years just to understand all of this and explain all of this, and I love it. So that's why we have Lent, preparation for Jesus being born on Easter Sunday, and like I say, prayer, fasting, and abstinence. Now, according to an article I have got from Catholic Answers from their website, Catholic.com, go visit them. And I will put this in the comments of the broadcast so you can see for yourselves. Lent is the 40 days before Easter in which Catholics pray, fast, contemplate, and engage in acts of spiritual self-discipline. Catholics do these things because Easter, which celebrates the resurrection of Christ, is the greatest holy day of the Christian year, even above Christmas. And Catholics have recognized that it is appropriate to prepare for such a holy day by engaging in such disciplines. Now, Archbishop Fulton Sheen noted that the Protestant attitude is summarized by the line, "First comes the feast, then comes the hangover," while the Catholic attitude is, "First comes the fast, then comes the feast." I had never heard that before reading this before. It's kind of funny. That's just some Catholic humor. Forgive me, sorry. The reason Lent lasts 40 days, once again, is that 40 is the traditional number of judgment and spiritual testing in the Bible, as it says in Genesis chapter 7, verse 4, Exodus 24:18, Exodus 34:28, Numbers 13:25, Numbers 14:33, and in, I believe this is, sorry, I can't read this one little thing I have. Lent bears particular relationship to the 40 days Christ spent fasting in the desert before entering into his public ministry, as it talks about in Matthew 4, in Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 through 11. Catholics imitate Christ by spending 40 days in spiritual discipline before the celebration of Christ's triumph over sin and death. Now, fasting is a biblical discipline that can be defended from both the Old and the New Testament. Christ expected his disciples to fast in Matthew chapter 9, verses 14 through 15, and issued instructions for how they should do so in Matthew 6, 16 through 18. Catholics follow this pattern by holding a partial fast on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. So these Ash Wednesday today and Good Friday, which will be 2 days before Easter Sunday, are days that we as Catholics try to really make those days important days of fasting. Abstinence from certain foods is also a biblical discipline. In the book of Daniel, chapter 10, verses 2 through 3, we read, "In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all for the full 3 weeks." Catholics use a practice similar to Daniel's when, as a way of commemorating Christ's crucifixion on a Friday, they abstain from eating meat on that day of the week during Lent. The only kind of flesh they eat on Friday is fish, which is a symbol of Christ. Even the Ash Wednesday practice of having one's forehead, like mine here, signed with ashes has a biblical parallel. Putting ashes on one's head was a common biblical expression of mourning, as it says in 1 Samuel 13:19. I don't know which, sorry, there's another smudge here. Isaiah 61:3, Jeremiah 6:26, Ezekiel 27:30, Daniel chapter 9 verse 3, Matthew 11:21, and Luke 10:13. By having the sign of the cross made with ashes on their foreheads, Catholics mourn Christ's suffering on the cross and their own sins, which made that suffering necessary. I was surprised today because I had been to many Ash Wednesday Masses throughout my life, and there have been times, like I noticed today when I got my ashes, the Eucharistic minister who did that for me said, repent and believe in the gospel. I noticed in previous years I had always heard them say, remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. So I was just surprised that now they're using different words, but that doesn't change the meaning of this whole thing, just different words. So these are the reasons why Ash Wednesday is such an important day in the Catholic Church. I've noticed, pardon me, I noticed in, there are some other churches outside of the Catholic Church that do follow Lent, but they use a different word. I've heard other churches call it, like, they have something called the Revolt Campaign, or they just might use different words, but still follow Lent, but they just call it a different thing. And when I was younger, I always thought that, I was like, wow, Lent is really tough. I mean, I can't eat meat on Fridays. I have to fast on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday, especially. Man, because I'm just so used to eating what I want to eat, and the fact that I have to follow these rules, I always looked at it as being very strict. That's how I looked at it when I was much younger, before I fully understood all of this. I've noticed it's obviously good to go into life having an open mind and having a positive mindset. If you look at things like, oh my gosh, I can't do what I want, that's not right, that's not good, well, that's a selfish way to think. Because we as Catholic Christians need to put Jesus first. We need to put the church first. Our lives are not always about us. I've heard, like Bishop Robert Barron, the founder of Word on Fire Ministries, he always says this. I'll say the whole thing, not just this one thing I just said. Christ is at the center. Know that you're a sinner, and remember that your life is not about you. I just saw something happen on my screen. Something just kind of got my attention. Sorry. Everything's fine. But like I say, Christ is at the center. Know that you're a sinner, and remember that your life is not about you. So we need to realize that our lives are not always about us. Now, we obviously have some important things going on in our lives. There are things important to us, people important to us, friendships important to us, other important events that are important to us. And yes, we do make these important things in our lives, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it only becomes an issue when you say, well, I'm just going to follow what I want, and I'm not going to live my life for God or for Jesus. Though it's only when certain people think in that kind of way where it becomes a problem. So that's something that we all need to avoid. But like I say, I think this is my first time doing a broadcast on Ash Wednesday, and I'm glad that I was able to do this. I think this was the perfect idea for today's broadcast. But like I say, these things I read from Catholic Answers, I'm going to put them in the comments on the Facebook broadcast and on the YouTube as well, so you can find them there, and you can look up what I just read right here on the broadcast. So I hope. Another thing, very important. Another thing that we as Catholics do during Lent normally, and well, this is strongly encouraged by the church, but it's not mandated, that we give something up for Lent. Just some worldly pleasure, give it up for the Lord so we can focus on strengthening our interior lives, our spiritual lives with God. So our lives are not always about us. So we don't become like certain people who live their lives for the world or for themselves and not for God. I remember years ago, I gave up Facebook for Lent, and that was not easy. It was not easy at all, especially also because I have this broadcast. I have to be on Facebook. Now, but like I said, I did that years ago. There have been times when I gave up looking at wrestling on the internet. That was not easy either. But it's strongly encouraged. I'm not saying that my life is perfect, but what I'm going to do this year, I'm going to try to add something. I'm not just doing this for Lent, but I'm also hoping to do this, for the rest of my life. I want to attend daily mass at least once a week, because when I was studying to get my master's degree in Catholic theology, and actually, yeah, I recently had it framed here. I'm glad that I just started talking about this. Pardon me for just one moment. Just got my master's degree in Catholic theology. This might show up backwards if you're watching on, I can't remember if it's Facebook or YouTube. But yes, got my master's degree now. This is an 11 by 14. It's much bigger than my bachelor's degree when I got that. So, while I was studying to get that amazing degree, I spent a lot of time in prayer, and trust me, there were a lot of difficult moments that I went through personally. Life was not always easy during the time I was in grad school, and I had my fair share of struggles and things that I had to deal with. So, but the Lord got me through all of it. God got me through all of it, and I certainly want to thank Him by trying to make an effort to attend daily Mass at least once a week, which I've been trying harder to do. I owe my life to God, and I'm very thankful for Him. I love the Lord, and I obviously want to strengthen my interior life and try to present a good image in the best way that I can. I was recently having a conversation with my best friend, and I've heard them say this a lot. They can be a little negative about certain things, and they seem to be under the impression that I care about what everybody thinks of me. Now, that is true to a certain degree. It's not entirely true. I mean, what he was trying to say to me is, you shouldn't always care about what everybody thinks about you, because there are certain people in this world who probably, no matter what you do, it'll never be good enough for them. I know that. Trust me, I know that. I care about the people who are actually going to try to look and see me for who I really am, what I'm trying to be. Instead of looking at me thinking nothing but bad things or negative thoughts because they may not like me, or they may not want to speak to me anymore or care about me anymore. I am not concerned with those people in those categories. But I do care about everybody, and I understand the fact of life, that life is not always going to be filled with things that you like, things that you want. But we all gotta be there for each other and try to do what I'm trying to do here, and this is the legacy that I want to leave behind. So I hope that you will enjoy the beginning of this Lenten season, whether you're Catholic or not, and I hope you try to really focus on strengthening your interior life, caring for others, not judging others, and making the Lord the center of your life. So, and I will try to have another broadcast before this week is over, because I should have had one last week. So yeah, got to get caught up, and I'll try to do that. Pray for me, please. So until the next broadcast, take care, God bless, and once again, remember, dignification is better than criticism. Live life to the fullest. Happy Ash Wednesday.